Warning. This video contains spoilers for DC Universe's Doom Patrol. Viewer discretion is advised. DC Universe is out and I paid for a year of it. This is DC Discussion. So before I start this recap of episode 3 of Doom Patrol, I just want to state that I appreciate the fact that the writers and the showrunners of the show can, read minds and shit. Because almost all of the comments and critiques that I had about the second episode were respectively touched upon and addressed in this episode. Yes, I know that's not how TV production works, alright? Just let me have this. I'm just very impressed with their decisions in dissecting characters here. Though for certain characters it just leaves me with more opinions later on down the line, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Let's talk about episode 3. So in the beginning of this episode, we get a good hint of the beat plot points right off the bat, specifically with Cliff and Larry. Cliff, in which, while searching through Niles' stuff in order to find info on where Mr. Nobody could have taken him, finds the phone number to his daughter, and Larry's life before the Cosmoning, in which we see hints of his life Mr. Nobody alluded to in the last episode.
Don't you get it? I have no say in our relationship, Larry. It's always about you. Your career, your family.
Right, because I'm the one who actually has something to lose.
So I have opinions about where they're going with this angle and Larry's backstory, if you couldn't already tell. But they touch on it again in the last part of the episode, which, if you don't mind, I want to hold off giving my opinions about until that happens. Anyway, Cyborg calls everyone in for a meeting because he discovered some info on Mr. Nobody, specifically who he was beforehand, and the location of where he received his powers, a town in Paraguay. They all reluctantly agree to head there while Cyborg makes plans to travel there via jet, but because Silas wanted him to come home to stay on the course for his foolproof plan to join the Justice League that he developed for him, he cuts Victor off because Silas is a piece of shit no matter what universe he's in. So with no jet to get them there in a day, the team takes the bus on a 2-week road trip instead. They each take turns driving the bus, until it's Larry's turn, who provokes the cosmic spirit living inside his body enough to actually sabotage the trip by doing enough damage to the engine for them to have to pull over and get a motel room for the night. This leads to the next morning, where a lot happens. Vic and Cliff continue to be at odds with each other, which is honestly getting a bit old at this point. I honestly don't know why Cliff is so anti-Cyborg at this point when he's been nothing but helpful. Rita locks herself in the bathroom in order to prepare her body from not melting all over the place, which, coupled with the Vic-Cliff stuff, makes the tension in the room all the more palpable. That's when one of Jane's alters takes control, grabs Cliff and Larry, and just teleports to fucking Paraguay, I guess. Though, to be fair to Crazy Jane, there was a scene before this happened that explained how her alters and their corresponding superpowers work that puts things into perspective.
There's something I've been wanting to ask you about. I'm curious how you managed to keep all of your people in line.
They're not my people. I don't control them. I respect them and their right to exist. Maybe if you weren't such an OCD alpha douche waffle, the negative spirit wouldn't treat you like one.
So I can't really get mad at her for not deciding to use her teleportation powers once Cyborg's plans fell through. Plus, splitting the team up in this manner makes for some pretty interesting dynamics. Take Victor and Rita, for example. Not having any other positive outlet to let out his frustration regarding the situation they're in, Victor takes it out on Rita by saying she's been completely useless for the entire trip, and she appropriately reads him right the fuck back. Now, I didn't necessarily know how to feel about this scene when I first saw it because of how out of character it was for Cyborg according to what I saw so far. But in retrospect, I really appreciate it as a development tool that teaches them both about humility and respect. It did a decent job getting the point across. Meanwhile, the rest of the team is in Paraguay, where they discover that the Nazi responsible for making Mr. Nobody has turned his lab into a clinic where individuals come and pay ridiculous amounts of money to be turned into metahumans. Oh, look at all the PewDiePies. That's also when they found out that Niles was there during Mr. Nobody's creation and appropriately shot the Nazi. Don't worry, those were different times. Nowadays, we just punch them. in the face. That's when Jane and Larry do a bit more digging. Jane finds out that the Nazi doctor is still alive, while Larry discovers the hyperbolic time chamber used to make Mr. Nobody in hopes to finally separate himself from the cosmic entity living inside his body. And now we get to the point that I made in this video, because I finally see something in Jane that I've been wanting ever since her initial introduction. I finally see depth. Her initial interaction with the Doctor, while not much, gives me such a better grasp on her character than the previous 2 episodes did, because she's not just being used as a way to move the story along, or to advance the development of someone else. We finally get a sense of her relationship with her alters, and her overall sense of self. I never got that in the first 2 episodes, and seeing this low-key made me excited to see the route that her development goes in. Now, in the case of Larry, he has a bit of an existential crisis / outer body experience. Because not only is he being forced to confront the cosmic entity because it refuses to leave him despite entering the machine, but he also deals with the guilt that's been plaguing him even before his accident. And the reason why I wanted to wait until this part of the video to talk about Larry's darkness is because of how the episode portrays it. You see, I said in the first video when it was revealed that Larry was queer and cheating on his family, was that the only way to be queer without being a pariah while living in that era of America was to adapt and survive. This episode shows that it wasn't survival first and foremost on Larry's mind. It was selfishness. And as accurate as the narrative in question is to some queer people who grew up in the 60s, Larry's have your cake and eat it too mentality up to the realization of his selfishness after his accident is a bit disheartening to me. Like, this is obviously the hurdle that he has to go through in order to grow as a person and become better. I'm just not a fan of the narrative in question. And that's due to the equivalent stigma already attached to queer folk in the first place, specifically bi and pan-leaning queer folk. Nevertheless, his past behavior explains a lot of Larry's actions over the course of the series so far. And despite my previous opinions, I'm still interested in Larry's development and seeing where it goes. Especially now that the Doctor is dead, Silas gets his head out of his own ass long enough to help out Victor and the rest of the team, and they go off to continue the search for the Chief. So while I wouldn't say this was my favorite episode, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't an important one. We got proper exposition in regards to the creation of Mr. Nobody, a solid yet gory fight scene, and a nice sense of depth and development from Jane and Larry respectively, while at the same time not completely placing Rita and Victor off to the sidelines. If anything, I'm interested in seeing what next week's Cult Patrol is going to be about. But with that being said, readers, your homework assignment for the day. Write in the comment section below what you thought of Doom Patrol Episode 3 if you've seen it. If you want to help financially support the channel, you can join my Patreon by clicking the card at the end of the video or in the link in the description down below, where you can also find a link to my merchandise store. Or if you prefer to give a one-time donation, you can find the links to my PayPal and my Ko-fi account in the description box as well. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and every other Friday. But until then, this is Readus 101. Class dismissed.